What's happening, everybody, and welcome back. This is the Funky Brain Podcast, and I'm Dennis. Very excited and honored to have that sober guy on the show today. So we're talking about recovery, addiction, sobriety, just trying to help a few people along the way. So I reached out to Mr. Shane Raymer, who hosts that Sober Guy podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on the podcast, man. I love the title, The Funky Brain, man. That's legit.
Where that came from was my friends over the years in the 12-step program that I go to. You know, I would come in, because when you get sober, it's not about not drinking or doing drugs or whatever your addiction is. It's about growing up. And it's painful growing up later in life sometimes. So I used to come in with all these funky thoughts, and my friends always said, oh, Dennis has funky brain. So that's where this came from. My book is called Funky Wisdom that I wrote. And so it's kind of like I got the funky thing going on.
Yeah, we got some funky brains, man. I got a funky brain too, man. It's man, some days are better than others, you know what I mean? And some days are amazing, and some days are I go, why in the heck why am I thinking about this right now? This is insane.
But you know what's cool is that at least now you're aware of that.
Yeah,
you know, you're like you can have some crazy thoughts go through your head, and you're like, instead of doing stupid things or punching a hole in the wall or saying things you have to go apologize for later, and just drink it until you want to throw up.
You know what's cool about that too is I don't beat myself up over those thoughts anymore either. You know what I mean? Like I used to, like, even if it's to go back to drinking, I can still have those urges sometimes, even after I was 7 years in September. You know, certain things come up and you go, man. And so like, if I have those urges, I used to get real down on myself. Man, why are you thinking about that? Why would you do that? You're sober, like you ever. Now it's like, okay, I get it, man. The brain and the heart is not connected, man. Two totally separate things. And, you know, it's nice to be conscious of that today. It helps out for sure.
Yeah. Awareness is always number one, man. So if I can be aware of it, now I can do something about it. And then the next trick for me, the next thing I need to do is calm down. Right. So it's like, cool. Now I have this awareness. Something's not right. These people aren't behaving the way they're supposed to. I don't feel good. I'm not making the money. The relationship's messed up. And okay, that's going on. I acknowledge that. But now I need to meditate and calm down. And then I can approach it from a sober-minded point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, sure, man. Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your story.
So, I mean, it goes back to childhood, like a lot of us, a lot of chaos at home, controlled chaos, uncontrolled chaos, a little of both, I guess. I always said I was never going to drink. I was never going to do drugs, you know, because it's what I saw a lot of growing up in the house. And shoot, by the time I was 14 or 15, right around there, you know, I started smoking weed and drinking, and that led to a 17-year, you know, full-blown addiction in the last couple of years between drugs and alcohol. And towards the last couple of years, I had my daughter. She was a baby at the time, right around 2 years old. My wife, who I've known for, since we were 12 years old. And man, my life was just, it had gotten to a point where it was no longer fun. I was waking up every day, swearing off that I wasn't going to do what I did yesterday, only to find myself doing the same exact thing I did yesterday, you know, intoxicated by noon, intoxicated and driving and working and trying to just exist and not die at some point. It was exhausting. It was miserable. I was over it. I tried to stop quite a few times on my own with success. I think I'd put a couple weeks together here and there, but for the most part, man, it was always, you know, as I was going back to it, I never really submitted to it. I never surrendered to it. I never came to the full conclusion, you know, and surrender that I needed some help. So once I was able to do that, kind of give up and stop trying to control it on my own, I went and got some help. I went into a 30-day treatment program out in Sebastopol, California. Man, that 30 days it wasn't easy, but it was the easy part. It was coming out of that and now having to you know, to be a husband, to be a father, to be this new person on life's terms rather than Shane's terms, and been able to put, you know, a few years together now and just, you know, trying to just show up. That's like one of my favorite mottos, man, is just show up, let God do the rest, put a lot of faith and trust in Jesus, and try to do the right thing by putting the one foot in front of the other type of thing. And I know some of that stuff is real cliche. I know that it's kind of the stuff that we say, but at the same time, I really do try to take action on that kind of stuff too and keep it simple. So, that's in a nutshell, 17 years right there really quickly. And there's a lot more to that, but I'm open to anything in particular too. So I'm really happy to be sober. I'm still happily married. Thank God. Still, I do podcasting for a living. I started That Sober Guy in 2014, just 6 months out of rehab, I think, just as a way to stay sober. Still doing it to today. We put out episodes a couple times a week, definitely on Fridays. And I'm just grateful and really blessed to be able to do what I do today and not be dead.
Yeah, and that's a great story. And a lot of it is similar to so many people that are struggling right now. And this is the reason that we met today. It's like neither of us are making millions of dollars by doing this, but if I could just help that one person not want to kill themselves or be as depressed as they are, or to have a better successful relationship or improve their health or improve their life all around, then that's really the goal of all this. Everything else is extra.
Yeah, I can't imagine trying to get sober right now through all this stuff that's been going on. It's I've seen some quite a few new people come into some of the digital meetings. One in particular, actually, if you don't mind, I can plug this at 6 p.m. every 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. My sponsor actually started it. It's a meeting, an AA Zoom meeting. Every night. I put it on my Instagram because I think there's an ID code in there. But if anyone needs a meeting, every single night, and he's kind of handed it off to some other people because he was doing it every single night himself. But I mean, there's anywhere from 30 to 60 people in there every night. A lot of new people. But point being, the reason I bring that up is because the new people that have came in there, I feel for the people who are trying to get sober right now. It's hard enough to stay sober going through all this and have to deal and cope and, rely on the tools that we learn along the way. But there's a lot of people struggling out there. So it's good that we're doing this. And thanks for having me on again too, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I love talking shop. I love talking with somebody who understands. And that's really why AA works and why all these other programs, the reason they work is because I can't go up to somebody if I'm feeling like angry or frustrated or fearful or insecure or pissed off or whatever my problem of the day is. I can't walk up to somebody in Starbucks and be like, hey, my life's all messed up and she's not behaving right and all these things. But when I get, and every once in a while I think about suicide because it just fleets through my head because, I think we're kind of wired differently. But if I go into a meeting and I say all these things that are going through my head, I look around the room and people are nodding their heads because they understand. And that's why sobriety is hard. And you know why most people fail in sobriety? Because it's hard. It's really hard. It's like you're changing your whole life. What do we say? You only have to change one thing, and that's everything. You have to change everything. And that's really hard for somebody that's been living an unhealthy, harmful lifestyle for years, and you take away their coping mechanism, and now life kicks you in the balls because that's what life does. And you're like, screw this, I'm going to go drink. It's hard to learn new ways to live.
Earlier, you said I can't remember the exact context, but it's less about drinking. And so that was one of the biggest things and I always try to express this to especially people who are new, who are trying to maybe either cut alcohol down or cut it out completely, whatever it is. Everyone's situation is a little different, but the alcohol for me was the tool to use. You just said it too. It's a tool. So what are the underlying issues between all that? Well, there's usually some trauma. There's usually some things, some resentment, some feelings that haven't been dealt with, whether it's from childhood, which in my case was a lot of stuff from my childhood and growing up that I wasn't able to deal with on a healthy way. And so what did I turn to? I turned to that alcohol, to that drug in order to escape from having to deal with that stuff. So when we take that out of the mix, now I got to cope with life, and I can't do that on my own because I don't know how. And so that's why between God, between a program, between community, I try to surround myself with awesome people who can build me up, who can be there when I need some help, who I can reach out to, that I trust, and hopefully in some cases I can do the same because we all have our ups and downs, right? It's kind of this circle. And so that's what I try to really express to people is like, man, like just look past the alcohol for a minute, because I think a lot of people don't get sober because of that stigma. Well, it's an alcohol problem. I have this alcohol problem. Yeah, we got a problem with alcohol, but what's underneath that? Why are you numbing yourself? Why can't you stay sober? And there's definitely a lot of different components to that. But I know for me, at the root of it, it was always about me not being able to deal with me on life's terms, So little trick there, man, might save somebody some time if you kind of wrap your, or get that thought like, wait a minute, okay, it's not just the alcohol. There's more to this thing. And that's what a 12-step program, that's what a men's group, that's what, surrendering to God can help us understand and deal with a little bit.
Yeah. And that's a lot to take in at first. It's like, there's so many moving pieces, right? It's not, all right, I'm going to stop drinking because my life's messed up and now everything's going to be great. And that's not how it works. It's like, I need to stop drinking now. Drinking wasn't my problem. My problem is my thinking and my feelings. And I don't handle life well. That's my problem. And so I used alcohol to handle that, to deal with my real problem, which is my thinking. So I need to change my thinking. And that, it requires humility. These are all big words. And, for people that are just struggling, like first you have to quit. And that's hard. And then it's about growing up. So you said something really awesome. You're like, I try to surround myself. I need to surround myself with health and sobriety and other like-minded people if I'm going to be successful.
Yeah, that's huge, man. It's impossible to really get 100% away from alcohol. You're going to go to a wedding. You're going to go to a birthday party. It's in every store. You're going to walk past that aisle at least at some point. So I think just being spiritually fit in that and being conscious of it all the time, because it just takes that one moment. Like I've talked to so many people who've had 14 years, 20 years, 5 years, whatever. And then all of a sudden there's one weird moment that pops up and it happens and they go back to it. And some of them die. Some of them don't come back, just because that one thing. So I'm really scared of that. And it's a good fear, I think, it's a conscious fear. Being around people that can remind me of that and that can support me and make sure I'm staying plugged in and connected for me spiritually to God is a big thing, because I go through phases, man, where I get real stuck in the world. It just happened recently where with all this crap that's going on right now, a lot of uncertainty and news reports and people talking and all this stuff. And I can get really caught up in the worldly stuff. And it's like, man, let me take a step back. And then I have a couple of friends who are pastors who I need to stay dialed in with, because they'll bring me back down and go like, hey, there's a bigger plan out here. There's something bigger than this. This is a spiritual battle, whether you're talking personally or whether you're talking on, this whole scale of everything that's going on the day-to-day basis right now. And so when I can kind of get on that wavelength and understand there's something bigger here, it's not just about me. It's not just about my things. It tends to make the day a little bit easier, if that makes sense.
For so many people that are struggling right now, and there are a bunch, and you mentioned that, and it's hard. People that are in lockdown for the last 2 or 3 months that have been struggling, or maybe they were like so close to making that step right before all this went down, and now they're stuck in an apartment somewhere, hopeless and helpless. We need to let them know that there are messages, there are outlets, there are, like you said earlier, there's a meeting you can go to online. In fact, I think there's probably thousands of them.
There's a ton.
Yeah, so reach out to us. And speaking of that, I just wanted to take a quick break here. So again, we're talking with Mr. Shane Raymer, and he's the host of That Sober Guy podcast. And if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, Shane, how would they do that?
The best way, so you can go to thatsoberguy.com. There's a lot of resources on there. There's some hats and some shirts and all kinds of cool stuff on there. And then also probably the best place to hit me up is on Instagram. It's @RealThatSoberGuy. And then I'm @Shane Raymer on Twitter. I just don't know how to use Twitter still. So Instagram's probably the best place. It's @RealThatSoberGuy. Yeah, and you can holler at me. And I try to get back to everyone. So messaging or check it out on there too.
Cool. Yeah. And so I just want people to understand, for somebody that's that's doing a search right now, or whenever this podcast airs, looking for how can I get sober? And this video pops up. I want them to know, because usually the people that I interview, and probably along your lines too, I'm usually interviewing like fairly successful people. I've interviewed athletes, celebrities, football players, entertainers, Emmy award-winning people, and they see that successful person there, but they don't see the struggles that it took to get there. So, what advice can you give to somebody that's out there struggling and trying to find help right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question, man. It's a really good point too, because we don't see the grind that goes into, years and years and years of failure, of ups and downs. And, one of my pastors, Pastor Dave Patterson, and I've heard him say, one time that's always stuck with me, is that we don't lose until we give up. We win if we don't give up. And so I think that's a big thing, is not giving up. I didn't get it my first, second, third time. And that goes, so here's a really good analogy to this. Maybe someone struggling with alcohol, you can apply this to anything though. Like, I started doing CrossFit about a year ago, a little over a year ago. Somehow in the first week, I was totally fat, dad bod, out of shape, like just, I was just kind of coasting through, and I would try stuff here and there. It never stuck. And so we tried CrossFit. We had a friend that helped us get in and kind of told us a little bit about it. So you'd be great for it. So I go in the first week I'm there. We knew a couple friends that were there, and they were doing the CrossFit games, which they do at all the gyms across the United States, and all. Go in and they have heats or whatever, right? And so they do this workout. Well, somehow I just showed up just to watch it. I just wanted to go check it out. And I had a couple of friends there, and they were like, "Oh, you should do it. You should do it. Just jump in." And I'm like, I didn't really know what it was. I'm like, okay, well, we're going to do some push-ups maybe. I said, okay, so, I'll check it out. So to make a long story short, I jump in with a couple of friends of mine who were in there, who had been doing CrossFit for 5+ years, in great shape. And they know about this. And here I am, the guy who just totally sucks, who's totally out of shape. There's people around watching, and I'm trying to do like these pull-ups and it's totally embarrassing. In my own mind, it's embarrassing, right? Most people really could care less, right? But to me, it was embarrassing, right? It was tough to kind of come to that reality point of like, man, I really am out of shape, and this isn't going to happen overnight. And so here's the point to this, is that we got to suck sometimes at things in order to get better. And we got to stick with them. We got to have patience. We got to grind away and chip away. And that's why we talk about doing it one day at a time, one moment at a time, living in the moment. Fast forward a little over a year later, I just did my first Murph workout, which if anyone knows what a Murph is, it's a mile run. Yes, Dennis, it's a mile run. It's 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats, followed by another mile run. Now, I didn't do it with the vest, and I had to modify some of the pull-ups because those kicked my ass doing strict pull-ups. But point being is, I couldn't do one pull-up a year ago. I couldn't put together a month of sobriety 7 years ago. You know what I mean? But I just committed myself, I surrendered to the process, and I gave up, and I said, God, you got this. Like, I'm not in control. Just let me show up, and you're going to do the rest. That doesn't mean I'm going to be a lazy ass either. I still got to show up, and I got to put the work in. Both of those things said, I just want to encourage those, it doesn't happen overnight. We don't get immediate gratification. And that was a big problem for me. That's why I liked cocaine, because I got high really, really quick, but life is not like that. We got to have patience. We got to have some goals, some visions. And we just stick with stuff. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be challenges along the way, but we got to hang in there and just chip away at it. And over time, we start putting some time together. We start getting better. And then, man, we got a story to share. It's the biggest thing, man. We got a story to share with others to help other people. So those are probably a couple of things right there that come to mind off the top of my head.
Yeah, I love that. We're uniquely qualified to help other people. How can a drunken drug addict who used to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and I was also out of shape, unhealthy, black circles under my eyes, It doesn't define who we are. That was our past, right? And one of the things we learned in our program is to leave the past in the past. It's behind us. There's nothing we could do about it. And if we're here, that's another chance at life today. And, choosing to do CrossFit or some other workout, I'm 180 pounds right now, and I've been eating a lot of cookies for during this coronavirus. When I stopped drinking, I was 240 pounds when I stopped.
Dang. Oh, you dropped a bunch, man.
That's awesome. And so, I did CrossFit for a while, but whatever. I mean, look, as long as you're sober and clean, you have options and choices. And if you're healthy, you could do anything. All these problems that you have, they're not problems. They're just obstacles, opportunities. They're bumps in the road. There's different ways of looking at things. And I love your perspective and your story. It's awesome and inspiring. One last question. If you can go back to your 15-year-old self and talk to yourself, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
I think I'd go back and say, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, you're going to make mistakes. I think that another thing I would tell myself is that God has a plan for you. Like, God has a bigger plan for you than anything you could ever imagine. And if you're willing to surrender to that and give that up to him and give your life to Jesus Christ, like in that moment, you might be able to save yourself a little bit of heartache. Now, here's the kind of the thing to that at the same time is like, it's kind of counterintuitive for me to even say that as I'm speaking it out, because I really, truly do believe that we're all on a path. And I don't know that I would say anything at the same time, because I feel like my path was what brought me to where I am today and made me who I am today. So how'd I go back and change that stuff when I was 15? Maybe I'm not who I am today with this. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense or what it'll be. I'm kind of freaking myself out now that I'm even thinking about it. I'm picturing myself as this teenage little asshole I go back trying to talk to. But if I back up a little bit without going too deep down that hole, I think like the first thing I said would be, big man, just be easy on yourself. Just be easy. Don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah, and that's a great answer. And a couple of things. One, for those that are listening that don't want to go down the Christian path, that's fine. When we talk about God, we say the God of your understanding, right? So whatever that means to you, follow that path. You don't have to follow that path that Shane is necessarily. And if you do, awesome. Find something that makes sense to you, that you believe in, and follow that and do that. But another thing that you were talking about is that God has a bigger plan. Whatever God is for you, that's fine. But there is a bigger plan. And what my sponsor told me years ago? I was crying about all my problems and all my things that weren't going the right way. And I didn't have enough money and I didn't have the right girl and all this stuff. And he said, you know what, Dennis? He said, God's creating a masterpiece and it takes a really long time.
Yeah, it's good.
And his name was Joel. And I love that man. He died about 7 years ago. And I've not been able to replace him. And he helped create the man that you see today. I want to thank you, Shane, for coming on the Funky Brain podcast from that Sober Guy podcast and sharing some of your stories with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, man. Congrats on the podcast and keep it up, man. It's we need like an army of people out there just trying to spread the word and be there, because there's a lot of people out there that were in the same shoes that we were in not too long ago. And I think that's what keeps us on our toes and reminds us that we're all in the same boat, no matter if you got 1 day sober or matter you got 30 years. We're all one bad decision away from total destruction. So it's it's so important, man. So thank you for having me on.
Great messages, great wisdom, great words. And everybody, thanks for tuning in. Mr. Shane Raymer from That Sober Guy podcast and Dennis Berry with the Funky Brain podcast. Have a great day and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Dennis.
Hey, Dennis here. Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, I need to quit? Or maybe you've tried dozens or even hundreds of times on your own, but you can't do it. If you are sick and tired of being sick and tired, call me now for a free 20-minute consultation. We'll just talk for a little bit and we'll see if you don't feel better. And while we're all dealing with the COVID pandemic, I'm offering 2 free full 40-minute coaching sessions. We'll get you set up with the tools you need to become successful in recovery and sobriety. I know from experience, having been sober since April 8th of 2003, that it is not easy, but you don't have to do it by yourself. I'm here to help. We'll do it together. If I can get clean and sober, anybody can. So call me right now, not tomorrow when you're sick and hungover. Again, right now. I'm here to help. Have a great day.